By the end of this, you'll understand why the most dangerous man on Willow Crest Lane was the only one who moved when a 16-year-old girl hit the pavement. Nobody else did. Not the two joggers who slowed down to watch. Not the woman weeding her flower bed 30 feet away. Just a man in a faded olive work jacket, kneeling in the grass with his hands already moving before his mind had caught up to what they were doing. His name was Curtis Boone. And in 9 days, half the town would be whispering that he shouldn't have been there at all. The morning it happened started ordinary. Gold light over Willow Crest Lane, Curtis trimming a hedge at 7:04 a.m. 2 doors down, a woman named Carol Ashby called her son back inside as he pedaled toward the sidewalk Curtis was working. Curtis didn't look up. He'd stopped looking up for this kind of thing a long time ago. At home on 3rd Street, his daughter Maya, 10, dark curly braids, his same steady brown eyes, sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor finishing a hand-sewn denim patch of the two of them. "You're gonna be late," Curtis said. "You're always early," she answered. "It cancels out." Here's what you should know about Curtis before anything else happens to him. 6 years earlier, he'd served time on a robbery charge from the worst decision of his 20s. He'd been out 4 years. Same job, same rent paid on the first, same quiet routines, rebuilt brick by brick with no guarantee anyone would ever step back and admire the wall. He didn't complain. But the cost of being prejudged showed up everywhere, in a neighbor's tightened grip on her son's bike, in clients who quietly requested a different crew member, just to be safe, in Maya asking, more than once, why people looked at her dad funny. He dropped her at school at 8:10. "Love you, Dad. Love you more." Not possible. He watched the doors swallow her, the way he did every morning, and drove to his next job on Willow Crest Lane, 11 hedges, a full truck of yard waste, no idea his life was about to tilt sideways. At 9:52, a girl named Ellen Whitfield laced up her running shoes 2 streets over. 16, sandy-haired, chasing a personal best, a thin silver bracelet on her wrist that read Type 1 diabetic. She knew this trail by heart. What she didn't know was that her insulin pump had been delivering a slightly miscalibrated dose since the night before, a fact only confirmed later, at the hospital. At 10:14, less than half a mile from Curtis, her vision swam and her knees buckled before she could reach her glucose tablets. 2 joggers were closer. A gardening neighbor had a direct sightline. All 3 hesitated, not out of cruelty, but the very human paralysis of not being sure, of trusting someone else will handle it. Curtis didn't hesitate. He dropped his shears mid-branch, vaulted a fence, and reached her in under 20 seconds. He saw the bracelet before anything else. 6 years around an aging prison population had taught him more than he'd ever wanted to know about diabetic emergencies. "Hey. Can you hear me? You're diabetic, I need you to try and swallow something." He ran to his truck for a half-empty orange juice bottle meant for Maya's lunch, tilted it carefully to Ellen's lips, kept her upright, and only once her breathing steadied did he call it in, clipped, precise, everything a paramedic would need before they'd even left the station. By the time the first jogger reached them, Ellen was conscious and alive. "Thank you," she said, staring at him like she was trying to memorize his face. "Just glad I was close," Curtis said. That should have been the end of it. It was not. At Millbrook Hollow General, 40 minutes later, Ellen sat propped up in a hospital bed with an IV taped to her hand, a nurse calling her "lucky girl" in a way that had started to feel less like comfort and more like a verdict. Her mother arrived at a dead run from the office, still in scrubs, and didn't stop shaking until she'd counted her daughter's fingers and toes with her own eyes, an old habit from Ellen's infancy that fear brought roaring back. "Who found you?" Denise asked. Ellen tried to picture him and found the details slipping. She'd been half-conscious, the world narrowed to a voice and a bottle at her lips. "A guy doing yard work on the trail. I don't know his name." Denise made a note to find out. She did not yet know that finding out would cost her more peace of mind than not knowing ever had. Word moves through a small town like water through a cracked foundation. By the time Curtis picked Maya up that afternoon, most of Willow Crest Lane already knew the Boone man had reached the girl first. What they didn't agree on was what that meant. Grace Alvarez, who ran the landscaping company and had hired Curtis 3 years earlier over 2 clients' objections, heard it framed as a question before it was ever framed as praise. By Thursday, 2 of her longtime clients had asked to reassign him from upcoming jobs. Neither said his name out loud. Neither had to. Grace held the line, though it cost her more than she let anyone see, sitting alone that evening with a spreadsheet that made the cost of conviction very literal. Roy Castellano, who owned the hardware store and considered himself Main Street's unofficial mayor, said what everyone else was only thinking.
I'm just saying, mighty convenient, isn't it? Guy with a record, working right there when it happens.
Roy would have told you his concern came from love of the town, not malice toward one man in it, and in a strange way, he wasn't entirely wrong about himself. It was easier to keep watching one visible man than to sit with the truth that danger doesn't usually announce itself at all. But easy isn't the same as right, and the weight of Roy's, just saying, landed exactly where it always lands. By Friday, Maya came home with red-rimmed eyes, refusing to talk until bedtime, when she admitted a boy at school said her dad was probably going to jail again. "I didn't do anything to that girl," Curtis said quietly. "I helped her." "I know. He didn't believe me." "You don't have to make him believe you." "It's not fair," Maya said, her voice cracking.
It's not fair. Why do people think you're bad when you're not?
Some people decide who you are before they ever really look at you.
"It's not about you. It's them being scared of something, and it's easier to point at a person than sit with being scared." "That's dumb," Maya said. "Yeah," he agreed. "It is." He didn't tell her that this week had, for the first time in a long while, made him doubt whether 4 years of decency could ever outweigh 6 years of consequence in other people's eyes. He'd had reason to doubt it that same week. A client named Patricia Hale, whose fence he'd been scheduled to repair for 2 weeks, met his truck in her driveway before he'd even parked. "I called Grace already. I think we're going to hold off on the fence work. Nothing personal." "Something wrong with the estimate?" Curtis asked. "It's not that," she said, glancing toward an upstairs curtain that shifted almost imperceptibly, "a child, watching. With everything going on, I'd rather not have anyone unfamiliar around the property right now. You understand?" He did understand, that was the quiet cruelty of it. He'd just demonstrated, in front of half the neighborhood, exactly how he behaved when a child was in danger, and somehow that had become the reason to keep him further from other people's children, not closer. "No problem," he said, because arguing had never once bought him anything but more scrutiny, and pulled out of the driveway with the same steady hands he'd used to hold a juice bottle to a stranger's lips 6 days earlier. Vindication, when it came from a direction Curtis never expected. Officer Pete Larkin had arrested him 11 years earlier, the case that defined the next decade of his life. Now 45, tired around the eyes, Pete could have signed off on the routine incident report without a second glance. Instead, he requested to review it personally. Rereading the witness statements, 2 joggers and a neighbor, all 3 admitting under simple questioning that they'd seen the girl fall and hadn't moved, something shifted in him that he hadn't expected. His captain had shrugged it off as a routine file, told him not to overthink it. Pete requested to handle it personally anyway. 11 years ago he'd looked at a 27-year-old Curtis Boone and seen exactly what the file told him to see. What no file had ever told him was who a person becomes 11 years later, on an ordinary Tuesday, when nobody's watching and there's no reason to act well except that it's right. Pete found Curtis loading mulch bags the next afternoon.
"Wanted you to hear it from me. Report's gonna say what actually happened. Girls..."
2 witnesses closer than you, neither moved. "You did. Girl's alive because of it. That's supposed to fix something?" Curtis asked. "No," Pete admitted. "Just supposed to be true." Curtis studied him a long moment. "Appreciate you saying it yourself," he said, and it cost him something to mean it. Pete nodded and left without an apology, because 11 years of institutional caution doesn't unwind in one conversation, and this story won't pretend otherwise. The report went out Friday. It should have changed everything. It changed some things. Roy read it, folded it once, and told the next customer, "Well, the police say it's fine, so, I suppose that settles that," in a tone that settled nothing in his own private assessment, because Roy's fear had never really been about facts to begin with. Grace fielded one more call that week she never mentioned to Curtis, a homeowners association board member, suggesting, delicately, that he be rotated to less residential accounts, as a courtesy to families who might feel more comfortable. Grace listened to the whole sentence without interrupting. "I've got 11 employees," she said finally, "and every one of them is a courtesy to the families they work for. If your board wants to specify which employee handles this contract based on something other than the quality of the work, put it in writing and I'll pass it to my attorney, because..."
That's not a courtesy, Hal. That's a liability, and I don't carry liabilities.
There was a long pause, then, "That won't be necessary." She hung up, hands flat on her desk, having just spent a piece of her own standing in this town to protect someone else's, a small, uncelebrated courage the story of that Tuesday morning would never fully capture, because no one was there to see it but her. Denise Whitfield, Ellen's mother, a medical receptionist who'd spent every night since the accident replaying a version where she reached her daughter too late, found herself unable to do the one thing she owed this man, look him in the eye and thank him. She'd looked up his record online the night of the accident and told no one. It changed nothing about what he'd done for Ellen. It changed everything about how afraid she was to face him. She sent a thank you card instead, generic, signed, "The Whitfields," dropped in his mailbox from a distance, a payment made to settle a debt she didn't want to discuss in person. Curtis read it standing in his driveway and felt something in his chest go cold. Not cruelty. Worse, politeness deployed specifically to avoid him. That night, alone at his kitchen table, he pulled a folded flyer from a drawer, a landscaping job 2 states away, a place that had never heard the word "convict" attached to his name. He'd printed it 3 weeks earlier on a bad night and told himself he was just curious. Tonight he read it more carefully than curiosity requires. He thought about the parole card still folded soft-cornered in his wallet, carried 4 years as proof to no one but himself of the distance he traveled, and wondered, for the first time, whether the distance mattered if the town measuring it refused to update the scale. He thought about Maya's face when that boy said her dad was going to jail again, about how many more years of that particular exhaustion he could reasonably ask a 10-year-old to absorb on his behalf. He sat with the flyer until almost midnight. He didn't decide anything. But for the first time in 3 years, leaving felt less like defeat and more like a door he was allowed to walk through. 3 days later, on a Saturday with low golden light, someone knocked on his door. Maya reached it first. It was Denise, holding a small wrapped gift out in front of her like an offering she wasn't sure would be accepted. "I know this is Maya's birthday week. Ellen picked this out herself." Maya took it and retreated a few steps to unwrap it, leaving the 2 adults an uncomfortable pocket of space. "I should have said this weeks ago," Denise said, eyes finally lifting to meet his. "I was scared of what I'd read about you, and I hate that I let that outweigh what you actually did for my daughter. That's on me. Not you." "You don't owe me an apology," Curtis said. "You owe her mother a rested night's sleep. That's enough."
"I owe you a thank you I should have said to your face on day 1. Thank you."
Denise said, voice breaking slightly. "Thank you. For not hesitating. For not needing us to trust you first." Behind them, Maya gasped, a friendship bracelet kit, with a note in careful handwriting, "For the girl whose dad saved my life. I hope we get to be friends too." Curtis looked at his daughter's face, lit up in a way it hadn't been in weeks, and felt something in his own chest loosen. "Thank you for coming to say it," he told Denise. "In person. That mattered. It wasn't a movie ending. Nobody cried dramatically." Roy Castellano did not appear at the end of the driveway with a change of heart, because that isn't how real towns work, and this story was never going to pretend one gracious mother could undo 6 weeks of a whole community's suspicion. But something real had shifted, and Curtis let himself feel it without immediately bracing for it to be taken back. He didn't take the job 2 states away. Weeks passed. The story stopped being the thing anyone talked about at Castellano Hardware. Roy still, on occasion, told a customer he'd always kept an eye on that situation, a small permanent fiction he told himself. Some neighbors still angled their kids slightly away from Curtis's trailer out of old habit. That did not stop. This story will not pretend it did. But on an ordinary Tuesday weeks later, kneeling beside a different hedge on that same street, a woman he didn't recognize walked her dog past the sidewalk and gave him a small, unremarkable nod. Not a conversation. Not an apology on the town's behalf. Just a nod, the kind you give any neighbor doing honest work, the kind that costs nothing and means, in its own small way, almost everything. That night, Maya sat across from him at the kitchen table, her finished denim patch draped over her chair. "Do you think people are ever gonna stop being weird about you?" she asked. Curtis considered it honestly. "I don't know. Probably some will. Probably some won't. That part was never really up to me."
Then why'd you stop for her, if people were still gonna think what they think anyway?
He looked at his daughter for a long moment. "Because it needed doing," he said. "And that part was up to me." Maya nodded slowly, like she was filing the answer away for later, and went back to her homework. Outside, the porch light flickered on, illuminating 2 mismatched chairs and an ordinary street that hadn't fully forgiven a man for a past he'd already spent years answering for, a street that might never fully forgive him, not completely, not all at once. He kept showing up anyway. Not because the town had earned it. Because that was who he'd decided, on his own terms, a long time ago, to be. Maybe that's the part worth sitting with, longer than the story itself. How much of who we are should depend on whether the people around us are ready to believe it yet, and how a person keeps choosing to be good in a place that hasn't fully decided to notice.